Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is Brad Hurst coming to you yet again with another video regarding this time the winter solstice. The winter solstice is upon us. Some would say that it's actually starting today, others would say that it's actually starting tomorrow. And I guess it really depends upon which hemisphere you're in. But we're just going to kind of look through this and we can see what we've got. So here's our sun sitting here at its lowest point for us in the northern hemisphere, which marks the first day of the month of winter, which for us would be right around December 21st. This would be its lowest point. It sits here for a couple of days as it will turn around and start to move back in this direction like this. Then we actually have some interesting positions of the planets and the moon here. We have Mercury sitting right here on the heel of this individual who is known as the snake wrestler, the snake battler, the warrior who is destroying the dragon, whatever you want to call it. We are using the Babylonian imagery because the imagery that the Babylonians used, I believe, is the direct inheritance of the imagery from the pre-flood world. So this individual here is known as Ophiuchus in some of the modern astronomies, is known as the snake charmer, the snake battler, the snake handler. So we have the sun marking his rear foot as it's rearing up, and then we have the heel of the same individual being marked by Mercury, which in the ancient world was known as the god of words, covenant, and redemption. They didn't really think that these were actually gods up here. Okay, I don't want you to think that, but they actually spoke about the planets in poetic terms with the intent of trying to describe their motions. And so when we look at Babylonian astrology, it does not have the same connotations that we would have if we were looking at astrology today. So then we come over here, we have actually Mars, which in the ancient world was known as Aries, the god of war, the god of blood as well. And it's sitting in here in the balances with the two scales, price paid and price deficient, in the translation that we would get into the English of that. So we look over here, we've got Saturn right here sitting in the, basically I would refer to as the four-part or the four-strand cloak of this dual-natured warrior right here. And I don't really understand why it's broken up into four sections, but it is. And since we don't understand, I'm not going to comment on it. But this dual-natured warrior actually has his arrow pointed at the scorpion. And if you notice that this line here is curved, that would tell you that this, you follow the curve of this arrow, it actually takes us up right into this area here. So he's pointing at the area in and around this particular star right here, known as Antares, which is against Aries, or would be against the god of blood and war. This is Antares as well. And it's going to be kind of important here because we're going to see that this is exactly 180 degrees on the other side of the constellation known as Aries as well. So he's got his arrow drawn back and ready to go. Jupiter is pointing out this particular line right through here. I don't know if you can actually see this, but this is actually known as the constellation lines, and Jupiter's sitting right on this line, indicating that the bow is drawn and ready to go. In fact, in some of the other more ancient imagery, this bow is more in line with this area right through here. So, but that's what we've got. Over on this side over here, I want to show you something. I want to show you something that's actually pretty interesting. We have Venus actually sitting right here in the area, sort of kind of highlighting this head, which this head is actually, in all of the folklore, this head has actually been mortally wounded. Okay? So I can't make this stuff up. I'm just telling you that this, I'm following the folklore and just showing you, how this stuff was understood in the past, and this is actually Venus that's actually doing it. In fact, Venus is going to kind of come around and circle this at some point in time. So let's go back this way over here. So we got Venus here circling the, highlighting the wounded head. We got Saturn, for whatever reason, sitting in this four-strand cloak, which you don't quite understand. We got Jupiter sitting on the constellation line marking the area of the bow. We've got the foot being highlighted by the sun. We've got the heel over here being highlighted by Mercury, the god of words and covenants and redemption. We've got Aries, our Antares right here. We've got the scorpion with his tail raised up, I believe, ready to strike this foot. And we've got this foot coming forward, getting ready to step on the scorpion itself. Then we actually have, we'll have Mars sitting over here in the balances, the god of covenants, I'm sorry, the god of blood and war. But I'm going to go over here and I'm going to have us to look at the moon. The moon is in its waning phase. In fact, in a couple of days, it's going to cross in front of the sun, and you're not going to be able to see it. And so it's actually in its waning phase at this point. In fact, we'll have a look at this real quick. Come up here. So you can see the moon is actually starting to go into its waning phase. So, but the interesting thing about the moon is that it has passed right through here. It's gone right through this birth canal with this woman here who is actually wearing, this is not a woman with wings. This is a woman who actually has a veil, and she's actually pulled her veil up over herself, which has other indications I'm not going to get into. She's pulled her veil up over herself, and she's actually getting ready. She has actually brought forth the moon in birth. What is interesting about this is that this is the exact position. I'm telling you the exact position that the moon was in as it went through the process of the events of 9/23/2017. In fact, it would have began to show here, and then later on at the end of 9/23 would have ended up here underneath her feet. In other words, she would have brought forth this moon, and the moon would have actually have been under her feet. So I'm just telling you that's just the case. So in addition, I want to look at, let's go ahead and look at Uranus. Let's have a look and see where Uranus is at, all right? I think this is kind of important. You will be able to see Uranus at this time if you got clear skies, because it is within a magnitude of 5.72, which is within 1 magnitude of being able to see it. So you can still see it if you know exactly where to look. And Uranus is actually marking this area right here. And I'm not going to do this right now, but this area right through here marks the final place of the vernal equinox in 400 BC as it moves out of Aries and then begins to move into this area right through here, which is the begin where the vernal equinox would be at in 1 BC. All right. In fact, what's interesting is about the vernal equinox is the vernal equinox gets into this area right around here, right about the time that Jacob goes into Egypt. Okay, and that vernal equinox will go all the way through here throughout the Old Testament period, come all the way to here at this point in 400 AD. It begins to transition out, which, by the way, happens to be about the time of the close of the Old Testament. And then you have the opening of the New Testament with the vernal equinox sitting here in this area as well. In addition, let's go have a look at Neptune. Go over here and look at this. Neptune is sitting in the exact spot that the vernal equinox is going to be at in 1,000 years. Right now, the vernal equinox, I believe, if I remember correctly, it's either here or there. I can't remember where it's at. But right now, the current position of the vernal equinox, I believe, is actually right here. Okay, and that's where the vernal equinox was on 9/23/2017. And now we're moving through here and we're starting to transition out. In 1,000 years, we're going to be sitting right here. So I'm not going to tell you what to think about all this. I do believe that this. I don't believe this is a coincidence. How can this be a coincidence? This is. I think this is good stuff. It's fun to look at. We have a great time with it. Of course, we understand that we submit all this to God's Word. God's Word is the prism through which we actually view all this. And Psalm 19, where it says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the line's gone throughout all the earth. There's no speech or people who have not heard. Okay, I look at this and I believe it. I mean, I believe. What's so hard to believe about this? I believe it. And I just don't understand why there's so much resistance for this in the church among God's people. I mean, the idea that God created the universe as a gigantic clock to help not only to go through and put forth a display of the gospel itself, but also to help us to know where we're at in God's plan of redemption, is just beyond me why people just have such a resistance to this. So I do believe that the Bible does tell us about this. It points us to this. And like I said, the Bible is the prism through which we actually view all this. In fact, without the Bible, we would know nothing about this. So I thank you for your time. And until our next video, good day.